Hello, I'll be talking about welfare economics and trade. Consumer surplus is the difference between the price of a good or a service and how much the person is willing to pay. For example, if a good is $5 and a person is willing to spend $10, then he will get a $5 in surplus. Producer surplus is the difference between a price at which the producer is willing to sell a good or a service and the price they actually receive. Total surplus without trade is the sum of the producer and consumer surplus. It represents the overall economic welfare generated by the exchange of goods and services in a market. Using a real-life example, I will now highlight how Brazil benefits from trade to improve their overall economic welfare. Using hypothetical numbers, let's say in a closed domestic market, Brazil produces and consumes 2 million bags of coffee at a price of $10 per bag. The producer surplus and the consumer surplus should be the same. In a perfectly competitive market, both consumer and producer exchange goods at a price that maximizes their respective surpluses, and their surpluses are equal. Alright, suppose Brazil opens up international trade and the world price for coffee is $15. Given that Brazil can produce coffee at $10, it has a comparative advantage and will export coffee. What will happen to the consumer surplus? The consumers now had to pay the world price of $15 for coffee instead of the domestic price of $10. This means they had to pay more for coffee. As the price goes up, the quantity demanded typically decreases and the consumer surplus shrinks. Less consumers are able to experience this surplus. Basically, it means that the total benefit or the surplus that consumers derive from buying coffee has decreased. Producer surplus. Since the world price is now $15, it's higher than the domestic price of $10. Brazilian coffee producers will now produce more coffee to sell it internationally at a higher price. As a result, the producer surplus increases, and therefore the total surplus with trade is equal to consumer surplus, producer surplus, plus the gains from trade. When a country exports a good for a higher price, the domestic sellers are better off. However, the domestic buyers are not. Overall, the economy well-being rises because we have gains from trade. Onto my left, coffee exporters and large plantation owners, as well as their employers, would benefit from the coffee trade in Brazil. And onto my right, the environment and small coffee farmers would not benefit from the coffee trade in Brazil.